So my next guest is a very accomplished woman. She has created her own business. She's created her own path in the business world. And she has a very specific expertise. But that's not why I asked her to be on the show, which is really going to be interesting because we're going to throw her off a little bit. Kim Curtis is the best-selling author of Money Secrets, Keys to Smart Investing and Retirement Secrets. She's a nationally recognized wealth manager and advisor. She's the president and CEO of Wealth Legacy Institute. So she has her own company. So she knows how to talk about leadership and the things that we deal with every day running businesses and running our lives. She has been profiled in several publications, including the Wall Street Journal. So she's famous. Kim has attained numerous professional designation and has been recognized by the financial planning industry as having achieved the highest level of competence and expertise. But that's not why she's here. She and I were having a conversation, and it kind of entailed leadership and hiring people who are different than you, leading people who are different than you, because she has her own company. So we're going to talk a little bit about her expertise, and then we're going to get into what it's like to run a business for her. Kim, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Nothing like catching me off guard a little bit there.
Yeah, no, why should we talk about what you talk about all day, every day? Why don't we talk about some of the things some of the challenges that you have as a business person? So I'm
Fair
curious,
enough.
how did you become a wealth manager? How did you become the CEO and president of your own company rather
hmm
than just kind of take a cushy job at someplace else?
Yeah, fair enough. You may not know this. I actually have a legal background as well. And my area of expertise out of law school was negotiation mediation. And that took me to a dispute resolution firm that was headquartered out of New York City. And that firm, I moved up in the ranks and became the youngest regional vice president in the country and reported to New York. And as a result of moving up, I became a spokesperson. I no longer was in the heart of the matter of the settlement conferences or the mediations. And so I looked around and I thought, what's my next? And I had a friend that did assessments in human resources and came out with financial planning and money would be something that I would be good at. And I'm thinking, I'm 30 and I'm thinking I could knock this out of the park, like totally full of myself, had no idea what I didn't know at the time. With today's lens looking back, what a joke. But I switched and went into financial planning where I could kind of have more control of being at the heart of the matter. And I started out in a brokerage firm. And at first it was cool and I felt like I was right in the center. And then one day, I'll never forget this, Mark. I actually read the back of a client investment statement where all the
Mm-hmm.
small print is on disclosures. And at the time it was 8 pages, but it was really only 4 pages because I put two to a page and it was tiny, tiny, tiny
Right.
print. And I'll never forget, I read the whole thing with my legal background. Finally, which is embarrassing that it took me that long. And I remember a tear coming down my face, realizing that, oh my gosh, I am not a fiduciary where I put clients' interest first. I am simply in sales. And that was the start of my, okay, I need to leave this environment and really create an environment where clients are first, not last. And it wasn't immediate because I had small children at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But through that journey is how Wealth Legacy Institute was created, and that was 15 years ago.
So the turning point for you, the reason that you had to create your own organization was because you had a commitment to the people that you were serving versus making the money.
Yeah, absolutely out of alignment with my values.
And how has that contributed to your success?
That is the number one thing for success is when you're in alignment and doing what you love and it's easy and it flows, success comes to you. And I think that was a huge lesson for me to understand. And once understood, it was easy. I mean, it never easy, but it was fun and engaging and empowering and creative. And that's what I love doing, what I do today.
But by knowing a little bit more about you, I think that service part it's not just because you're in flow and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's because you really live, eat, and breathe service to your clients.
Well, I do think that's a success principle is something greater than yourself. And I believe that every day because I get out of bed and I get to hang out with people I really love and to live through them, their joys and their experiences and tragedies sometimes is really all the fabric of what I love to do.
Mm.
And that's what makes it worthwhile.
I want to get to this leadership stuff, but I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
kind of interested in something you said offhandedly that was really interesting to me is the relationship between money and living your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a connection that you make. Most of us have like angst about that,
Mm-hmm.
and we got to make money to live. And the way you said it, it was much more flowy and integrative. What's your philosophy on that?
Oh, I firmly believe that how you do money is how you do life. So if you put your head in the sand around money, you're going to be putting your head in the sand around other aspects of your life. And so once you kind of look out and ask yourself or unwrap some of these unconscious thoughts around money, they integrate into other parts of your life. So I don't think they're separate at all.
I feel
They
personally attacked here. Sue Zorman once said, look in your wallet and how your bills are arranged. It will tell you all you need to know about your life. And I look down and I keep my money in a binder clip,
Mhm.
like that you get at Staples, and wrapped around my credit cards. And I was like, she was so prescient. so
Mhm.
so so let's say someone sees that they're they think their life is going just fine,
Mhm.
but their money situation is a mess. They don't really, they may not even be in debt. They just don't know what they have or where they're going or whatever. How does that correlate for you?
I could take that in so many different levels, but at its most basic, it really starts with mindset. It really does in anything that we do. So if your life is successful in one area, you're not necessarily telling the truth about the other because money actually is the gateway to a happy, successful life. And we put so many meanings around money.
Mm,
But if you look at money as this may take you to a different place, but if you look at money as there's two laws of money. There's the human made laws, which is what I do every single day. It's tax mitigation, investment, portfolio construction. On the other side are the natural law of money. And those natural laws are giving and receiving, ebb and flow, intention and desire. All of those things that if you have the human made side of money mastered, success in today's world of culture, what does that look like? But you haven't paid attention to this other side of natural laws of money. You can have all the money in the world and have a very unhappy life.
that's not what I love is that you're a woman in a suit in the wealth management industry, and you're talking about kind of energetics. You're talking about
Mhm.
your relationship with people and with money and
Mhm.
with everything. And I really really enjoy this. By the way, if you can hear my dogs, everybody who listens to my podcast know that my dogs are part of my uh, uh, podcast. So I keep wanting to get to the topic I actually got you here for, but I'm so fascinated. It's really interesting for me. Uh, I After I got divorced, and I was taking care of my elderly parents, taking care of my ex-wife, who I wanted to stay home, and my kids and all that stuff. My money became a mess. I was dedicated to never having any debt or anything like that, and paying cash for everything. And my money, and then all in the middle of this, I decided to change careers, going from a lucrative career in high tech to I'm going to be a coach now. And so I did, and again, like you, when you change careers, it's a good thing you didn't know, right? What you were in for. So
Right.
so my money actually became quite a bit of a mess, and I didn't really pay attention to it while I was changing career and taking care of my family and all that. And then I set up a spreadsheet just like I remember way back when, and I started tracking all my money. I tracked whatever was on my credit cards. I tracked my income. I started paying attention and got conscious. And within a year, paid off all credit card debt, right? All my taxes. I have my money in my accounts for my taxes ready to go, right? Everything is all, and it took a year of consciousness, and that energy. It should have on paper taken more longer, right?
Mhm.
But the consciousness thing really really shifts. So what do you do for people when they walk into your office and they throw everything on your desk and go, I don't know.
We actually don't see a lot of that in the nature of my firm as it relates to the people we're working with. However, that is something that I deeply believe in and want to help, which is why I do some of these podcasts. Mark, was my own shit show in my 20s. So, being in a suit and having a legal and financial background, I can do both. I can do left brain and right brain. But my 20s were very, very difficult. If I were to go back, my parents got divorced when I was 14, and I had government assisted lunches. And I used
Mm,
to have a red ticket that I used to pass to the person in the lunch line. And the shame around that was, that I carried into law school. And then after law school, quickly defaulted on my school loans. I had no business understanding money and how that fit
mm,
in. So, what you described in terms of having all of this, the shame and overwhelm and not enough, or who am uh, I get viscerally. I know what that feels like. So to unwrap what is the story that we tell ourselves? Why me? What happened with my marriage? What happened with my divorce? What am I ignoring that I don't want to fess up to? And then to actually put the spreadsheet together and go, here's my real reality. And when it's conscious enough, all of a sudden you're motivated because all of a sudden you see one step at a time, one step at a time. It wasn't it wasn't overnight that I recognized my school loans, but I did have a story around that made a difference. And I'll share it really quickly. I had an anonymous person put $1,000 on my school loan debt, my debt. Um, and I actually looked at my statement, which is rare because my head was in the sand. I wasn't opening up my bills. And I saw that this was going down, not up. And act, that act that someone believed in me, what story was I telling myself that I didn't believe in myself, allowed me to pause.
mm.
And that moment, that belief that it's like, oh, huh. And that act of love was kind of, I needed to love myself first. And I think that was the start of I think it was a spark because it was immediate at the time. I remember it clearly. And that spark, it probably took several years for me to figure it out and then ended up in finance. Who would have thought, 8
Right.
years later? Crazy.
Do you ever find out who that was?
Thank you for asking that. I did several months later, and it was a woman that was probably 10 years older than me. And she was very generous, had no money herself, had no money herself. And believe it or not, 10 years later, I actually tracked her down. And she was still in Denver, where I live today. And she was having a yard sale that weekend, ready to move back to Pennsylvania to take care of, I think, her mother. And she was selling all of her stuff. And I showed up with an envelope in my pocket and to give her like interest from the loan, so to
Hmm.
speak, of $5,000. And it it said, I'm sure it was like, think of, I created Wealth Legacy Institute. How many jobs did we create? How many ripples did we do with the people we work with and their family and their children around money? And for that little small gift, how it changed so many lives, specifically my own.
That was I got goosebumps that someone believed, what
Mhm,
woke you up and what shifted you was someone believed in you. So now you can believe in yourself.
mhm.
What like the ripple effect of that gift from that woman is absolutely astounding. And there's a God, I can't remember his name. He was even on my podcast. He calls these things lollipop moments, where
Mm.
he his name is Drew. God, I can't remember his name. And he someone gave a lollipop to a little girl at some point, which did something for her. And then years later, she saw that person, told the story, right? And the ripple of like little kindnesses, and the reason his whole talk is about these little kindnesses that you do. You never know what the ripple effect is. So that's such a beautiful story.
Well,
Okay,
you talk about the pay it forward, but the real story is love. It's really not the pay it forward story. Isn't that interesting?
tell me more.
I don't know if I have more yet.
Okay, good. Because I get it, right? There
Yeah,
probably isn't more to say. I'm just curious. So
yeah.
if we can open our hearts and find love
Mhm.
like that, that handles most situations. So let's pivot a little bit to
Yeah.
running your own business, and kind of the thing that really intrigued me was the conversation around hiring people who are different than you.
Mhm.
So I would imagine people in wealth management come out of central casting and a cookie cutter, uh,
We all know what they look like.
right? I've been to a BNI meeting, uh, um, but I'm
Mhm.
curious. Uh, tell me one, why do you want diverse, we're not just talking racial diversity and all that stuff.
Mhm.
We're talking about people who have different personalities, different work styles, different,
Mhm.
different values, and you bring them into your organization. Why do you do that?
It took me a while to understand that. So I went through a lot of hiring mistakes to find what worked for our firm. And the reason it took me so long is that I needed coaching on myself.
Mm,
So I am a great leader, not a great manager. And so it took me, what is the area in management that I had to grow in to understand where I needed support? And the support was that what am I not good at? What do I not have fun doing? And once I shifted that to that idea, then all of a sudden it became easier to hire. So I coincidentally, this is true, but my team, almost all of them are under 30. I know, shocking. And they're brilliant. They're brilliant. They look at things so different. And I believe that how we do money today
mm,
is in the middle of huge disruption, which we've already seen as it relates to digital fintech, but it's in disruption as it relates to how we approach money. And the conversation you and I had in the very beginning, I think that my team gets that already.
because of their age and where they've grown up in society,
They're
they're seeing the
mhm.
change from a different vantage point, so their perspective is more ripe to embrace what's the trends. Is that what
They
you're
think
saying?
out of the box.
Mm,
And there's an expression in my work that is from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. I don't know if you've heard that expression. And
never.
it's universal in any culture. It could be rice paddy to rice paddy, clogs to clogs. And it's where there was an idea, where the entrepreneur, this idea that he created a business and did well. And the next generation moved from the country to the city and joined the opera board. And the third generation was broke and the family was fractured. There's a lot to be said about the transfer of money and the understanding of that. And does it do harm? Or because each generation needs to be its own first generation. So if you think about each generation is smarter than the generation before, that they already get things that took us quite a bit of time to figure out.
Mm,
And so to think out of the box the way they do, I think of them as peers. Um, and so we brainstorm a lot. And that's why our firm is kind of this small giant of innovation, is because of the technology advancements that our firm did early on versus my peers were afraid to do, that allowed us to be so much more efficient. And then when the pandemic occurred, we already had that going
mm.
on. We already could easily remotely work, since that was some of the things that we did anyway with our clients that were around the country.
It's so refreshing to hear you talk like this, because all you ever hear are people bashing people under 30 for not being
Mhm.
motivated, not being interested,
Mhm.
not being smart. And it hasn't been my experience at all. It just seems to be like a thing we like to talk about out there. But it's, I think they're freaking brilliant and really understand what's going on. I think there's a lot of anxiety, and rightly so, because of the political environment, because of the environment, and
Mhm.
because of all the things that they are going to have to deal with. So I totally understand that. But as far as interest in work ethic, it's definitely there. Yeah, it's so funny. I can talk to you probably for another hour and a half. You are such a fascinating human. So I can go from
Mhm.
topic to topic to topic. So whoever's writing my show notes, I really apologize. You're going to have to figure out how to make this a theme. But now, how did you adjust as a leader to working with people who are different than you, completely different, a completely different perspective? What
Mhm.
did you have to do to in order to be a good leader to them?
Step back. Now, trust me, I lead.
Yeah, I'm sure.
uh, I think stepping back and trusting them to show up. And one of the things of how they show up, and you said like a lot of anxiety. There is a lot of anxiety with that generation, and for good reason. But also the way Wealth Legacy Institute is structured, it has purpose and why we're here and what we're here to do. And I think that when there's a bigger vision that someone can buy into versus we manage money, we blah, 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 makes a significant difference to the buy-in of your team. And so that in itself helps in some of that anxiety because they're making a difference.
I think it's
And then
all
for,
it's all the
yeah.
difference. If you're stapling papers together,
Yeah,
but
right.
you know that the papers that you're stapling together go towards this organizational vision, it makes it much more interesting to do. I know they do more than that, but
Mhm.
that I think that's Jacks are better to be, to get people engaged.
So in the beginning, I felt like I was the engine pulling a train.
Hmm.
The you know the carts to the train, the cars to the train, and it was exhausting and tiring. And why am I this visionary? And yeah, I can't get stuff done. And then when I had this epiphany of expanding that creativity and allowing others to show their best, all of a sudden my world changed. And then all of a sudden we did things very differently, like the technology. I mean, that technology was probably an 8 year ago project. I mean, that
Yeah.
was a long time ago, where everything's integrated. The
What
back
woke you up though? What woke you up and made that shift for you?
Having the right person in the right seat on the bus. I had a team member who was also a certified financial planner, but very tech driven. And so he was able to take this firm and had vision of what it could look like a year later and create all the efficiencies. And what was happening at the time in financial services is all of a sudden these softwares were starting to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw that. And so we were able to very early on get our systems all talking to each other, that allowed that efficiency to then save a lot of time and other processes that we do.
Nice, nice. What's your vision? What's your vision for your company over the next 10 years?
Besides change the world and disrupt the
Well,
delivery
okay.
of
So
advice.
hold on. So you just
Yeah,
threw that out there. Change the world. How?
yeah, yeah. Um, I think the conversation around money is distorted. I believe that it was done under a masculine construct back in the 1920s. And that's why women don't necessarily engage in that conversation very easily. They engage in financial planning more easily because that affects their family and it's
Mm,
more of a goal setting. And so they can relate to that. And the language is not so linear. But for investments and the language around capital markets and money and GDP, it's not that interesting. It can be sexy sometimes, but generally only on one side, not the other side.
mm,
So I think showing up in languaging that allows it to be accessible to humanity all around the world. I mean, think of the unbanked in countries with the pandemic and how they had to deal with making things happen in those unbanked communities. So I think that changing the construct of money, that it's not dirty, that it's not masculine, that it's it's money needs you. Money is looking for you. It needs your vision, your ideas, your because money means nothing unless you put your ideas to
hold on,
it.
slow down. If you didn't hear that, money is looking for you, right? Again, remember this energetic aspect to your money, to your wealth, to your well-being. You have a wealth manager here talking about this. Really listen. All right, I'm sorry. I just wanted to point that out because it's such an elegant statement.
And I think that's where we could actually leave it because I could talk just like you, Mark, for a long time about this. But if you understand that money is looking for you versus I need money, I need money, I need money, money's not going to find you when you're in need. But
Hmm.
when you understand that it's looking for you, it's looking for your ideas, it's looking for what's important to you, it's looking for your vision of how it's going to help your family, of how it's going to change your world for the better and for others, back to that ripple of that gift, then money will find you.
Hmm. And so, last question about so money finds you.
Mhm.
I'm going to ask it this way on purpose. How do you keep it?
You got to love it. I know that sounds weird. God, that was just weird. I've never said it that way before, but it's
What
like
does
a
that mean?
relationship. It's like your relationship with your mate. You know, if money could talk, what would it want you to say to it? What would it want? What would it want to say to you? It would say, enjoy me, have fun
Mm,
with me, love me, hold me, uh, let it be abundant with your family and share it with others
mm.
abundantly.
I would say respect also. So
Good
everybody I know
one.
who has money respects money, right?
That's
The
excellent.
people I know who have money are the ones who check an extra third time for a better fare on their airline, right? And it's not because they can't afford it, and it's not because they're cheap. It's because they respect the money that they've earned. They respect the effort it took, um, and they're they're generous in other ways. So I love that. That was really beautiful. You're such a delight. Thank you for coming on my show.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me. I didn't think this would be the conversation that we would have.
So if whatever the title turns out to be, because I don't write the titles to my show, whatever the title turned out to be, we didn't talk about that. We talked about we talked about that and then a few other things. So I appreciate that you're such a lovely guest, and
Thank
you
you.
can be on any stage or podcast. Where can people find you if they want more of you?
Yes, wealthlegacyinstitute.com.
Okay, and we'll put that in the show notes. And the book is Money Secrets: Keys to Smart Investing and Retirement Secrets. Kim, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Mark. Really enjoyed it.
To everybody else, I love that you come along on the ride with me. I appreciate you a ton. I love you. Have a great rest of the day.